A dramatic shift has occurred, declining migrant encounters at the US-Mexico border in 2024. The situation at the US-Mexico border has seen a remarkable transformation in recent months. Migrant encounters, a key metric used by US Border Patrol, experienced a significant and sharp decrease throughout 2024. This downturn marks a notable departure from the record-high numbers witnessed at the close of 2023. Specifically, encounters plummeted from a peak of 249,741 in December 2023. By August 2024, this figure had astonishingly dropped to 58,038. This represents a staggering 77% decrease in a relatively short period, signaling a major shift in migration patterns towards the United States' southern frontier. Understanding this decline requires a closer look at the contributing factors. It is crucial to understand what these encounter numbers truly represent. They refer to apprehensions of migrants attempting to cross into the U.S. without authorization, primarily between official ports of entry. These figures do not necessarily equate to unique individuals. One person attempting to cross multiple times could be counted as multiple encounters. This distinction is important for accurately interpreting the data and understanding the scale of migration. The recent sharp fall therefore indicates fewer attempts, or perhaps fewer successful unauthorized crossings, rather than necessarily a 77% reduction in the number of distinct people trying to enter the country overall. The peak in December 2023 was a moment of intense pressure and public debate concerning border management. News reports were filled with images of crowded processing centers and discussions about the capacity of the U.S. immigration system to handle such volumes. The subsequent rapid decline offers a different narrative, one of significantly reduced pressure at the immediate border. This shift has implications not only for border communities and federal agencies, but also for the broader political discourse surrounding immigration. The reasons behind this drastic change are multifaceted, involving policy decisions on both sides of the border and potentially shifting global circumstances compelling migration. The scale of this reduction is noteworthy when compared to previous fluctuations in border encounters. While numbers have historically ebbed and flowed based on various factors including seasonal patterns, economic conditions, and policy changes, a 77% drop in just 8 months is particularly pronounced. This rapid deceleration has prompted analysis from migration experts and policymakers alike, all seeking to understand the durability of this trend. It also raises questions about the experiences of migrants who might now be waiting in Mexico or have altered their plans entirely. The data points to a significant interruption in previously observed migration flows. Policy interventions and enforcement have been the catalyst for change. A primary driver behind the dramatic decrease in migrant encounters at the US-Mexico border in 2024 appears to be a combination of new policy initiatives and heightened enforcement measures. One of the most significant policy shifts was an executive order issued by US President Joe Biden in June 2024. This order placed substantial new restrictions on asylum access for individuals who cross into the United States without legal permission, specifically between ports of entry. The aim was to deter irregular migration by making it more difficult to qualify for asylum if established legal pathways were not used, thereby encouraging migrants to seek appointments through programs like CBP-1. The June 2024 executive order by President Biden was designed to have an immediate impact on the flow of asylum seekers. It stipulated that the border could be effectively shut down to asylum claims once daily encounter numbers surpassed a certain threshold, with limited exceptions. This policy aimed to quickly expel migrants who crossed unlawfully, rather than allowing them to enter the U.S. to await lengthy asylum proceedings. The implementation of this more restrictive asylum framework sent a strong signal to potential migrants and smuggling networks about the changing landscape of U.S. border policy, likely influencing decisions far south of the border itself. Beyond U.S. domestic policy, increased enforcement efforts by Mexican authorities played a crucial role in the reduction of migrant encounters. Mexico stepped up its operations to interdict migrants transiting through its territory toward the U.S. border. This included deploying more security personnel, establishing more checkpoints, and working to dismantle human smuggling networks. Such cooperation from Mexico is often a critical component in managing migration flows, as many migrants travel through Mexico regardless of their country of origin. The increased Mexican presence and willingness to prevent northbound travel contributed significantly to the lower numbers reaching the U.S. border in 2024. The combined effect of these U.S. policy changes and enhanced Mexican enforcement created a more formidable barrier to irregular migration. Migrants faced greater difficulty in both reaching the U.S. border and in successfully lodging asylum claims if they did arrive without prior authorization. While the long-term efficacy and humanitarian consequences of these policies continue to be debated, their short-term impact on the statistics of border encounters is undeniable. The sharp decline observed throughout 2024 directly correlates with the implementation and intensification of these specific measures, altering the calculus for many individuals considering the journey north. The changing demographics of border crossers reveal who is arriving. The sharp decline in overall migrant encounters during 2024 was also accompanied by notable shifts in the demographic composition of those arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border. There was a significant change in the national origins of migrants. For instance, in August 2024, a larger proportion of encounters, 69%, involved migrants from Mexico or the Northern Triangle countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. This marked a substantial increase from December 2023, when these nationalities constituted only 46% of encounters. This suggests that while overall numbers were down, the relative proportion of migrants from traditionally common origin countries increased. The decrease in encounters was particularly dramatic for certain nationalities. Encounters with citizens of Venezuela plummeted by an astounding 99%, from 46,918 in December 2023 to just 626 in August 2024. Similarly, encounters with Cubans dropped by 98%, Haitians by 97%, and Nicaraguans by 96%. Significant decreases were also recorded for individuals from Peru, 95%, Ecuador, 84%, Colombia, 80%, and even China, 75%. These figures indicate that the new policies and enforcement measures had a disproportionately strong deterrent effect on migrants from further afield, who often face more complex and perilous journeys. The composition of encountered groups also changed. In August 2024, single adults constituted a larger share of encounters, rising to 62% from 54% in December 2023. Conversely, the proportion of people arriving in family units decreased significantly, from 41% of encounters in December 2023 down to 27% by August 2024. This shift might reflect the nature of the new asylum restrictions, which could be perceived as more difficult for families to navigate, or it could indicate that families are being deterred at higher rates than single adults by the combined enforcement efforts. Interestingly, the percentage of unaccompanied minors among those encountered saw an increase. In August 2024, unaccompanied children represented 11% of all encounters, more than double the 5% they accounted for in December 2023. This is a concerning trend, as unaccompanied minors are often particularly vulnerable. The reasons for this specific increase, even as overall numbers fell, require further investigation. It could be that policies targeting adults and families are not as effectively applied or deterring children, or that different factors are driving their migration. These demographic shifts provide crucial insights into the varying impacts of policy and enforcement on different migrant populations. Section 4. Public Perceptions and Political Realities, Border Security in the American Psyche. Despite the documented sharp decline in migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border during 2024, public concern regarding border security remained remarkably high. An August 2024 survey conducted by the Pew Research Center found that an overwhelming 88% of registered U.S. voters favored improving border security. This sentiment cut across party lines, though it was more pronounced among certain groups. For instance, 96% of Trump supporters advocated for improved border security, while a still substantial 80% of Harris supporters shared this view. This indicates a broad consensus on the need for a secure border, regardless of the actual encounter statistics. Earlier in 2024, before the most significant drop in encounters was observed, Public dissatisfaction with the government's handling of the border situation was already pronounced. A January 2024 Pew Research Center survey revealed that 78% of U.S. adults considered the large number of migrants seeking entry at the Mexico border to be either a crisis or a major problem. Furthermore, a striking 80% of adults stated that the U.S. government was doing a bad job in managing the situation. This widespread discontent formed the backdrop against which the Biden administration implemented its stricter asylum rules later in June. The issue of border security consistently figured as a key topic in the political discourse leading up to and during the 2024 U.S. presidential election cycle. The high numbers of encounters in late 2023 and early 2024 fueled intense debate and criticism of existing policies. The subsequent decline in numbers provided the incumbent administration with data to argue their new measures were effective. However, the persistent public desire for improved border security, as shown in the August 2024 survey, suggests that lower encounter numbers alone did not fully alleviate public concern or shift the political potency of the issue. The gap between the statistical reality of falling migrant encounters and the sustained public anxiety about border security highlights the complex nature of this issue. Perceptions are often shaped by more than just raw data. Media coverage, political rhetoric, and deeply held beliefs about immigration all play significant roles. The fact that nearly 9 out of 10 voters still called for improved border security, even when encounters had fallen by 77%, underscores that border security means different things to different people, and that a statistical reduction in crossings may not satisfy all definitions of a secure or well-managed border. Section 5. Global Crises, Domestic Impact, Syria, USRAP Suspension, and the Evolving Refugee Landscape. The landscape of refugee affairs in the United States is influenced not only by events at its own borders, but also by significant international crises and shifts in domestic policy concerning refugee admissions. One major global event with implications for refugee movements has been the long-running Syrian crisis. Ongoing since March 2011, it created one of the world's largest refugee populations, with millions displaced. While many Syrian refugees sought safety in neighboring countries, others looked for resettlement in nations further afield, including the United States, though the U.S. intake of Syrian refugees has been modest relative to the scale of the crisis. A significant development occurred in late 2024 with the fall of the Assad government in Syria. This political upheaval led to a wave of spontaneous returns. By early 2025, over 1 million Syrians had reportedly returned to their homes, including approximately 301,967 from neighboring countries and 885,294 internally displaced persons. A UNHCR survey conducted after December 2024 indicated a strong desire among Syrian refugees in the region to eventually return, with 80% expressing this hope and 27% intending to do so within the next 12 months. This could potentially lessen some global resettlement needs for this specific population, though significant humanitarian aid within Syria remains crucial. Adding another layer of complexity to the U.S. refugee situation, a notable policy shift occurred in May 2025. During a hypothetical second term, former President Trump reportedly suspended the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, USRAP, indefinitely. This decision was framed by his administration as a response to the high levels of migration experienced during the preceding Biden administration, despite the sharp decline in border encounters seen in 2024. Such a suspension would represent a drastic curtailment of a long-standing humanitarian program, effectively halting formalized refugee resettlement from overseas, regardless of conditions in their home countries or their eligibility under international law. The same month, May 2025, also saw the Trump administration reportedly admit a small group of nearly 60 white Afrikaners from South Africa as refugees. This action, occurring alongside the broader USRAP suspension, drew criticism for appearing to be a selective application of refugee admissions, potentially prioritizing certain groups while broadly shutting down the program for others. These events, both the international developments in Syria and the hypothetical domestic policy changes regarding USRAP, highlight the dynamic and often politically charged nature of refugee issues, impacting who is considered a refugee and what avenues for safety remain open to them. Section 6. Managing the influx, the U.S. refugee program, and future complexities. The United States has a formal system for managing the resettlement of refugees from around the world, known as the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, USRAP. Established by the Refugee Act of 1980, USRAP provides a standardized process for individuals who meet the legal definition of a refugee, someone outside their country of nationality, who is unable or unwilling to return due to a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. This program is distinct from the asylum process, which is for individuals already in the U.S. or at a port of entry. The USRAP process is complex and involves multiple government agencies. The Department of State typically handles initial contact and processing overseas. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, under the Department of Homeland Security, is responsible for vetting applicants and adjudicating their refugee status. Once approved, the Department of Health and Human Services, through its Office of Refugee Resettlement, coordinates their arrival and provides initial support and services to help them integrate into American society. The entire screening and resettlement process is notoriously lengthy, often taking 18 months to 2 years, or even longer. Historically, U.S. refugee admissions have fluctuated significantly based on global events and presidential priorities. Admissions peaked at over 200,000 in 1980 with the passage of the Refugee Act. After 9/11, annual caps were generally set between 70,000 and 80,000, though actual admissions often fell short. President Obama raised the cap to 110,000 for fiscal year 2017. However, President Trump drastically reduced these caps, lowering them to a record low of 15,000 by FY 2021. President Biden subsequently raised the cap significantly to 62,500 in 2021, and then to 125,000 for fiscal years 2022 through 2024, though actual admissions have continued to lag behind these ambitious targets. The recent sharp decline in irregular border encounters in 2024, coupled with the hypothetical suspension of USRAP in May 2025 under a new administration, paints a picture of profound uncertainty for those seeking refuge in the United States. While border policies seem to have reduced unauthorized crossings, the potential dismantling of the formal refugee program would close another critical door for vulnerable populations. The leading countries of origin for refugees admitted through USRAP in 2024 included the Democratic Republic of Congo, Afghanistan, and Venezuela. The future of U.S. immigration policy will undoubtedly continue to be a subject of intense debate, balancing national security concerns, humanitarian obligations, and the enduring complexities of global migration.